If your brand belongs in the heart of the yachting world, this is where it happens. Yachting International Radio reaches over 1 million yachting professionals and enthusiasts every month, with 77 million impressions, 220,000 social followers, and 74,000 podcast subscribers. Our hosts are insiders, crew, captains, CEOs, trusted voices shaping the industry. This is targeted, high-impact advertising in a luxury niche. Visit yachtinginternationalradio.com/advertise. Your audience is already listening.
Okay. All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Bridge. I have a special guest here today. One of my friends named Johann from Joe Consulting. They're a South African wealth management company that helps South Africans when it comes to personal wealth management, financial planning, and tax situations. And so, here at The Bridge, we like to introduce different services that like to help and serve crew alongside innovative new technologies being introduced to our industry. So on that note, I would like to introduce my dear friend, Mr. Johann. If you would like to introduce yourself and your services, and we'll get started from there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Johann, based here in Cape Town, South Africa. And yes, we provide tax services for specifically Superyacht crew who are from South Africa, who travel and work all around the world. We also divulge in investment and tax planning for all of you Superyacht crew. And my background is I worked in corporate for about 15 years, and I identified a growing market segment of Superyacht crew requiring tax services. And with this in mind, I decided to actually leave corporate and establish Joe Consulting. And I'd been approached by a few South African yacht crew who had no idea of the tax implications in terms of the requirements for filing with the South African Revenue Services. We like to refer to them as SARS over here. And from there on, it was just a natural flow of referrals of growing clients and with the practice. And we have a specific emphasis on Superyacht crew from South Africa. That's pretty much what we tailor our services at. And I happened to meet Alex a few months ago while he was visiting South Africa. We were actually at the Polo. And we started our conversation, and here we are today having this conversation.
Yeah, it's been a heck of a journey meeting you guys in SA and then seeing where this is evolving into and helping you get more exposure and really serve the yachting community that I'm trying to do at YCC and offering these services such as yours. Can you dive a little bit more into the tax compliance challenges when it comes to crew from South Africa? Because, a lot of these crew that come in, they're super young, they're just eager to get on a boat, and they don't really understand any sort of tax implications once they go home and they're earning revenue across the entire world.
So the South African Revenue Services, they're actually able to access all your banking details and wire transfers from all over the world. So no matter where you are across the world on your yacht, and if you are a South African tax resident in particular, it's phenomenally important to do your declaration. Now, in order to do that and be fully compliant, there's a couple of basic requirements that need to be in place. If you are working, you need to have a formal employment contract, whether it's with a South African or foreign company. You also need to be a South African tax resident, as I mentioned, and the income basically can compromise from your basic salary, gratuity, leave pay, sick leave, and one of the major requirements are with the South African Revenue Services is that you spend 183 days out of the country, with one consecutive trip of being 60 days consecutively. Once you meet all of those requirements, your first 1.25 million rand is exempt from tax. Everything above that will be taxed at a marginal income tax rate. And that basically is where just the fundamentals of the compliance comes from. So what we're finding a lot with the crew is that they go over and they actually have no idea that they have this fulfillment or requirement with the South African Revenue Services. And that's where I step in and assist them with regards to getting them, number one, compliant, and then also assisting with retirement and financial planning. We like to sit with a case-by-case basis on each client to determine what their requirements are, what their needs are, and where they would want to see themselves in the future. Because we find that a lot of the youngsters or super yacht crew tend to not really look after their wealth or the earnings that they make while they're working. So it's very important for us to get them tax compliant, but also make sure they invest for the future.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important. I can speak from my experience, and my friends, a lot of my friends are South Africans. But it's like once you get into the industry, you're kind of in, you get all this money, and you don't really know exactly what to do with it. And then 5 years, 6 years goes by real quick, and then you're looking back and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I didn't really do anything very well with that money. And you're just putting it all down the drain and liquor, other activities, whatever. Could you just go a bit more into depth about the services that you guys offer at Joe Consulting so we can get a full picture for anybody that might be listening?
Yes, so we do detailed tax structuring. So when we sign up a new client, we have a face-to-face or a mobile communication where I first determine what your basic requirements are in terms of your future planning. But also I do a thorough background check in terms of where you're standing with the South African Revenue Services. So if you have any outstanding tax returns. So that's your tax structuring that we do there. Then we do a financial assessment as well. I'd like to get an understanding, like I said, of where you currently are and where you would like to be in the future, whether that's taking your earnings and purchasing real estate or having a diversified investment portfolio. We also do retirement and investment planning, as mentioned, and I like to do ongoing financial reviews with you. They can be done on a biannual basis, or in the event anything changes and new options come available. I've recently had a situation where I had a young couple who were working on the yachts. And, when you're earning good foreign income, whether it's US dollars or euros, it's not a really great investment to leave the money in the bank. So I sat down with them and we decided to purchase a property here in Cape Town. And because they spend, 9, 10 months out of the year out of the country, it was a good investment to lease the property out whilst they are out of the country to generate passive income. So it pays for itself and it generates income. But at the same time, your capital base increases in value with the capital appreciation over the year. So those are sort of the core services that we provide at Joe Consulting.
Yeah, that's amazing. Do you also go out looking for these investment opportunities? So you set up a strategy for the best way for them to grow financially in the next 5, 10 years. And you also actively go out there looking for opportunities for them?
Absolutely, yes. So we very much do it on a client-to-client basis. The most important thing for me is to understand where you want to go in life. And then I present you with opportunities and how to achieve those opportunities. So in this case scenario with this young couple is they had no idea, for instance, how to purchase a property. So I put them in touch with a mortgage broker who assisted them with finding the correct type of property and purchasing it at the correct price. And at the same time, we also can present investment opportunities for you to grow your money.
Oh, that's great, man. Could you just share any case studies of how you helped crew that have approached you and whatnot on avoiding the tax man? Because I know in the United States, we deal with Uncle Sam all the time, and it's definitely different in SA, but it's something that's extremely relevant, and it could save you a lot of hardship down the road, especially when you want to get out and start building your life, which is something that hasn't been entirely supported, at least in my viewpoint, in the yachting industry.
Yes, Alex. So, prevention is better than cure. And I've had numerous crew who've come across my desk who haven't filed any tax returns. In South Africa, with the South African Revenue Service, it is a criminal offense if you do not file your tax returns. And like I said, because they have access to third-party data. So I've had a few cases where some yachting crew have not filed for 10 years. And the first thing I do is establish what is outstanding with SARS. And I open that dialogue because I'm a tax practitioner. I'm able to speak to SARS directly and communicate with them and say, this is a new tax client of mine who has these outstanding tax returns. I'm notifying you now that we are going to get this client compliant. I didn't go through the whole procedure in terms of documentation and the compiling of these returns. So To give you a practical example, like I mentioned, I had one client who had about 10 outstanding tax returns, and we got him fully compliant with SARS. Even when were penalties implemented, I put together a document to SARS based on the facts, and SARS determines it on a case-by-case basis whether they'll waiver the penalties or interests when there's outstanding tax returns. But like I said, the most important thing is to get clients fully tax compliant. As mentioned, it is a criminal offense when you do not file an income tax return in South Africa.
Yeah, that's extremely important. And I also think it's like what you're doing is so important. And the way the world is going now and introducing these services is because it's like people that join yachting, it's a fantastic thing. You get to travel, get to experience things the majority of people don't get to, and it's extremely special. But if you don't do it right, or if you just do it to really have fun, you can have some real world implications once you go home. Or you can end your career 10, 15 years down the road and really have nothing to show for it except, a few Gucci bags, a lot of trips to Bali, and an outstanding tax bill once you go home. And then you're like, oh crap, I can't really leave the industry. You have to go back, make yourself compliant, and then continue working in an industry that you were thinking you were going to say goodbye. That's why like the golden handcuffs is a real situation inside the industry. So I think for the majority of crew, it's an extremely valuable service, especially like, for South Africans. And so they can get themselves in, even if there are situations and you feel kind of anxious or scared because you haven't taken responsibility for this, or it's something you just put in the back burner, that there are those options with you that they can get themselves compliant and take away all that stress that could be, weighing them down and any real decisions they want to make with the progression in their life.
Absolutely, yeah. And just to touch on, if you are a yachting crew member out there and you want to understand what are the documentation, what is it that you need to prepare, I'll walk you through those steps. The basic record keeping is as follows. You've got to keep your pay slips. You've got to keep your bank statements, your records. You've got to keep copies of your passport. If you don't have those, or you've lost your passport, you better find it for me, or otherwise your Seaman's book. Now, a Seaman's book is really useful because it has the dates that you got on board the ship and when you've departed. That assists me to determine how many days you've been out of the country. And that's the exact supporting documentation which SARS requires in order to be compliant. As mentioned, you've got to be 183 days out of the country with a 60-day consecutive period.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely necessary to be doing this stuff. And do you have any, just before we get into the questions that some of our audience members sent to me and we can break down, can you just give any quick tips before we go on to that on what these people should be expecting, the baseline activities they should start right now to make themselves a bit more financially healthy?
Stop spending. That's the one thing.
But it's fun.
Fun and as easy as it is to, whilst you're out traveling and seeing the world, just think twice before you go and spend your hard-earned money. Because you know what, at the end of the day, you're spending that time that you're working, you're spending that money. So for me, that's always the baseline, is just think twice before you spend that dollar or that euro.
All right, Steve, we're going to move on to some questions I got. I made a post a couple of weeks ago preparing for this interview we're having today. And so we're just going to go through those. These are questions asked by the audience, people in our network and on their pages. And so just starting off with number one, Johann, I've been on boats for a few years now and never filed taxes back home. Should I be worried?
Yes, you should be worried. So SARS is aware of all money transfers in and out of South Africa via the South African Reserve Bank. So the South African Reserve Bank discloses all money transfers to the South African Revenue Services. So any non-disclosure and filing of income tax returns is a criminal offense. So in a nutshell, yes, you should be worried.
Okay. Well, that explains that. But you also explained that your services and your education is the exact right step to get yourself compliant and avoid going to jail, which is not a nice thing.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Number two, can you explain more in depth the 183-day rule? And does it have to be all at once or can it be spread out? I know you sort of touched on the 60-day rule, but just to answer this question.
Yeah, so Basically, you have to have a formal employment contract. So from the date of acceptance of your 12-month period out of South Africa starts. So as mentioned, I also use a Siemens book to record your number of days working offshore. And then during a 12-month period, you have outside of South Africa, you have to just be out of the country for 183 days with a 60 consecutive trip in between. Now, just to break down, there's a difference between a tax year, which starts from the 1st of March and ends at the last day of February. Now, then there's a calendar year, which will be from January to December. So let's use a practical example. I started my contract on the 1st of April, 2025, and it's a 12-month contract. And so my last day would be on the 31st of March, 2026. So during that period, you're out of the country, say 9 months in total. Now, that would easily give you your 183 days. And within that, hopefully you would have been on a trip for 60 consecutive days. So even though the tax period runs at a different time period from a tax year to a calendar year, as long as you have that over a 12-month period, you will meet the requirements.
Good. All right. Number 3. These are really good questions, actually. All right. If I'm paid into a Euro account, so they're paid in euros, and they never send money to SA, so it's never really going into an SA bank account, do you still need to declare anything?
Yes, absolutely. So as mentioned, SARS, South African Revenue Services, is able to have access and view all money transfers with bank accounts in your name. So how it basically works, say for instance, you have a Euro or a USD standard bank account. And an example, say you're earning 5,000 euros a month. And you haven't transferred it to South Africa, so converted it into South African rands. We use these SARS exchange rate tables to convert your monthly salary into rands to compile and file the tax return. So even if the money is not transferred and landed in South Africa, we use those tax tables in order to do the conversion.
Okay. So yeah, I didn't know that. I just figured, if you had a bank account outside of SA, they wouldn't be able to get into that. But if they have access to it based off your name and not your social security number, that's something people should really, actually know.
So the South African Revenue Services has built a lot of software and AI where they can track and to see what your total credits and debits are in every single bank account that you have. So that's how they're able to track and monitor movements of money. Now, to give you a good example, if you don't declare or file a return, but the South African Revenue Service can see 500, 600,000 rand or 40,000 euros or dollars being moved, credits coming into that bank account, and you're not filing a return, there's a red flag right there. So as a tax practitioner, I'm able to view third-party data. Now, that basically gives me a viewing access point just to see what is your total transfers of money coming in and out and which bank accounts that you have. I can't access them. I'm just able to see what SARS sees on you, which is critical when compiling a return. It gives us all peace of mind that when we're compiling your tax return, we are checking all the boxes.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important. I didn't even know that makes me a little nervous for the South Africans to track like that. But it's like, it really shows the value of your service that you can look from a 360-degree angle, get everything in order to make sure that these people stay compliant and they avoid the penalties or fines or potential jail time when they want to come home and start building their life back home.
No, absolutely, Alex, because my services go further to the point. I will need to be 100% satisfied that I've ticked all the boxes when I compile your return. So for me, it's critical that I ensure that what SARS sees on you, I see as well, to give me peace of mind, but specifically my tax clients as well.
Fantastic. Okay. What happens if I don't meet the 60-day continuous rule? Does that mess everything up?
Yes, unfortunately, one of the prerequisites or requirements is the 60 days. So if you do not meet the 60 days, you won't meet Section 10, and therefore you will be liable on your full earnings at the marginal income tax rates. There's no ifs or whats about it. That's a absolute must.
Okay. All right, that's a must. Okay, you heard something, it sounds you just mentioned Section 10. Can you go a bit more in detail on what that actually means?
Yes, absolutely, Alex. So from the 1st of March 2010, any foreign employment income earned over and above 1.25 million will be subject to normal tax in South Africa. So if you're earning 1.1 million, you're completely tax exempt if you meet all those requirements. But everything above that, so you say you're earning 1.4 million. So the difference between that 1.4 and 1.25 is going to be taxed at the marginal income tax rate. But there is some relief from a double taxation perspective. It's called Section 6 squat. So if you're in Portugal and you've been taxed over there by the Portuguese tax authorities, when we're compiling your return locally, we can offset those foreign tax credits as well. But basically, Section 10 is everything above 1.25 million now is taxed. All right.
Yes. Can you get into trouble with SARS even if you've been living and working offshore for years?
Yeah. So first we have to determine if you are a tax resident in South Africa, and then I will basically do my investigation to determine what type of returns are outstanding. And then I notify SARS that you're in the process of compiling your returns. And then, as mentioned, failure to file any of these returns can get you into trouble and lead to significant penalties and potential criminal prosecution.
Yeah, you definitely do not want that. I've known people that have been living over in Europe for years now, and it doesn't really hit you until that reality comes in. You're thinking, oh crap, I want to have a family. I want to buy a house. I want to start my life really outside of yachting. And then there's all this headache that comes in that can be overwhelming. And talking to a professional like you can help ease their mind to make sure that they know somebody is there on their corner.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, sweet. Okay, I'm about to start my first season. Is it worth chatting to someone like you right now, or wait until they start getting their first contract and getting some traction in the industry?
No, absolutely, yes. It's most definitely in your interest to chat with me first to set up your tax compliance requirements and a structure before you commence on your first session or your first season out there. So definitely get in touch with me, and so we can get you tax compliant before you even start.
Yeah, sweet. I think this question is kind of already we answered in our previous discussions, but I'm still going to ask it. How do we actually prove we are out of SA for those 183 days if you're flying through EU ports without passport stamps? So I'm assuming this has something to do with the Seaman's Discharge book.
Yeah, this is actually a very good question. So we can use your Seaman's book to track your days on board the ship and date of departures, because we're starting to see a lot of transition where we're not seeing stamps on passports anymore. So they're digital. So we're going to have to potentially request them from the airlines. But to answer the question, Seaman's book is the answer.
Great. Is it true you can get taxed twice if you don't handle things correctly between SA and your job?
So, as mentioned in the example, if you're taxed by another tax authority, say like in Portugal, and so SARS does provide relief using a Section 6 squat. So for any foreign taxes that were paid, we apply the foreign tax paid as a credit when we file your return to Africa. So we can basically offset any foreign taxes that you have paid locally as well.
That's extremely helpful. It's really that you offer a full range of services that can put people at ease of mind when it comes to their financial situation, and they could just have fun scrubbing teak or working on the boats and traveling the world like they're supposed to. Right.
100%. So it's about giving you peace of mind to carry on with your work. I take care of the tax side.
Perfect. That's perfect. Okay, can he help if I'm based in the Med right now, or do you need to travel back to SA to sort this stuff out?
Provide a complete mobile tax compliance offering. So you don't have to be back in South Africa to resolve any outstanding matters. We can communicate using various infrastructure. Sometimes we use email, sometimes we use WhatsApp, but absolutely, it's a complete mobile offering.
That's perfect, because you know how in the yachting world, everything moves quick. So you don't really know where you're going to be from a week from now. But to have that person in your back pocket that cares about you, is taking care of those financial situations at home, so you can focus on your job, focus on your career, focus on your personal journey in life.
Absolutely.
All right. And can you explain a bit more of your pricing structure? Someone said they don't have a ton of monies, but they want to get things done right and get that, that process started.
Yes, absolutely. So each tax client is determined on a case-by-case basis. So after obtaining all the required information, I put together a detailed and formal quotation, which we discuss and decide on the way forward. So far, each tax client has benefited from this process.
Yeah. What kind of help do you offer when it comes to long-term stuff too? I know we touched bases on the investment opportunities and stuff you've done for previous clients, but if you can really expand on that a bit more, is it like stock options, real estate, business acquisition, anything?
Yeah, because coming from the formal sector, in corporate, I've gained a lot of knowledge from business. So one of my business partners specializes in wealth and asset management. So I've partnered with really great people, and we discuss this on a case-by-case basis with each tax client. So whether it's in real estate, whether it's a diversified investment portfolio, we first determine what is the client's needs, and then we present options. And depending on your risk sort of assessment, usually the younger you are, or the sort of higher risk you want to take. But as you start leveling out in life, you pull back a bit more.
So one of the other questions was, does he help with long-term stuff too? I know that you've already kind of broached the subject in our discussion earlier in the episode. But if you could just expand more on that and what it looks like, real estate, stock options, index funds, etc.
Yes, Alex. So yes, I do. My years in corporate exposed me to a lot of people in various sort of industries. So one of my business partners specializes in wealth and asset management. So, and we discuss this on a case-to-case basis with each client. So determining on what your risk assessment is, usually the younger you are, the greater risk you'd like to take on. And as you sort of get a little bit older, you start leveling out and we reassess. But we do this on a client-to-client, case-by-case basis. So it can be real estate, it can be various stocks, diversified portfolio. But like I said, we do this on a case-by-case basis with each client.
Perfect. I think you've talked on this a little bit more these last few questions, but we'll just do them to reiterate them. What if I've already messed up a few years of returns? Is it fixable or am I screwed?
I enjoy this question, actually. So it is possible to request an extension or file a notice of objection with SARS. Now, the commissioner, which we'd like to refer to as SARS, or South African Revenue Services, they will assess all the facts and then make a determination of whether those previous tax returns can be opened and adjusted. So again, it's a case-by-case basis, but yes, absolutely, it is possible to correct previous returns if they have been filed incorrectly. I usually push SARS quite hard on this subject matter. It does unfortunately take some time, can take anything up to 90 business days for SARS to even acknowledge a notice of objection, especially when tax season opens. And just to touch on that, tax season opens now on the 14th of July, 2025, for all 2025 tax assessments.
Okay, so it's good to get that stuff in order now, since, that's 10 days from now.
Absolutely, yes.
Cool. Okay, so does he do everything over Zoom or WhatsApp? I know you kind of talked on this before, but you can go more in depth if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm extremely flexible, Alex. So I have an infrastructure in place to communicate across all platforms. And I've been communicating for multiple years with my clients using various means of communication. So with the technology nowadays, it's quite easy to be in touch with clients. When you're taking a break while you're on the yacht and you're sending me an email or a WhatsApp or giving me a video call, I'm very flexible.
That's good. That's good to hear, because people can just reach out to you really anytime and get advice on any sort of situations that arise, or where should put this $4,000 or $5,000 charter tip that they just got, and it's burning a hole in their pocket, and they're deciding, you know what, I want to make smarter decisions now with this money instead of, go buy a table in Ibiza and spend a good afternoon there.
100%, yes.
Okay, sweet. Any more tips on what they should start doing now to not get nailed by SARS later?
Get in touch with me. That's not
Easy enough. Easy enough.
Yeah.
Well, that actually segues us to our last section here is how can people do that? How can people get in touch with Joe Consulting and you, Johann?
So, yeah, you can totally get in touch with me on my website, joeconsulting.co.za. I will also share my mobile number with you and my email address after this podcast as well.
Sweet. That's fantastic. Well, I'd just like to give a message. I met Johann a few months ago. It takes me a while to trust people, certain people and whatnot, but when I met him, I truly felt that this was somebody I could trust and that has the yachting industry's interests at heart. He's a good person, and I know these things are sensitive subjects when it comes to financial planning, but they are a necessary part of becoming an adult and growing yourself in this world and, really taking advantage of what the yachting industry can offer to go back home to your family and create a life there and move forward in your goals and dreams and your ambitions. So with that, if there's any final words from you, Johann, and then we'll wrap it there.
Thank you, Alex. It was fantastic meeting you in the beginning of this year. And, I truly felt that you're a really humble, great human being. And I saw a future working with you as well. And I'm very much appreciated, therefore. And, my clients, I like to put first every single time, without a doubt. It's, when you're working offshore for so many months at a time, it can be extremely stressful. It can also be very hard, not just on yourself, but your whole family. So to be fully tax compliant, but also putting money away for the future. So if you decide, okay, I'm going to do this for 5, 8, 10 years, starting your planning from a tax and an investment perspective today is the best decision that you can make. And I'd like to walk that journey with you.
No, you heard it from the man himself. With that, I'd like to thank you for joining me on. It's been a true pleasure. I think this is a very educational podcast that can help a lot of people. As the Med season is going in full spin, people are getting ready to come for the Caribbean and Florida Bahamas season. This is an extremely valuable podcast, and I would like to thank everybody for listening to The Bridge. I'm your host, Alex. If you want to find Johann, go to yoconsulting.com or reach out to any one of us and we'll get you the appropriate links. And with that, I'd just like to say thank you, stay safe, stay humble, God bless.